Hey there, Meryl here from WebDevFuel. In this video, you're going to learn how to use AI as a web developer in a way that helps you become better with time and in a way that helps you learn how to become better at your job instead of hindering your progress. So I want to start by saying that AI is a great tool if used correctly. So AI is a new tool inside our toolbox as web developers. It is something very recent when it comes to using it to develop web applications. And while it can be a very powerful tool, it can also be a blocker in two different situations. First, when we're overly dependent on it. So if you're writing code and you stumble upon a problem, and the first thing that you think of is, I'm going to ask ChatGPT, then you might have a problem because you start becoming overly dependent on it instead of thinking about the problems yourself and trying to solve them on your own. And the second blocker can be when we're overly confident of its answers. And the fact of the matter is that LLMs make mistakes a lot of times. And if we're using an LLM to try to solve a problem inside of a web application on a topic that we do not have ourselves a lot of expertise in, then we can introduce a lot of bugs into the code base without even knowing it. And the fact of the matter is that you should try to rely as little as possible on an LLM to try to solve things that you do not understand yourself. So if you're able to vet the code, if you're able to take a look at the code and see exactly what it does, and you understand completely what the code does, then I don't see a problem in using an LLM here or there to try to write the code for yourself. But in a situation where you stumble upon a problem in a web application and you ask, for example, ChatGPT for a solution, and then you copy and paste that solution into your editor, and then the problem gets solved, but you don't really understand how it got solved, then that can be a problem because that solution itself can introduce a lot of bugs into the code base. And in this video, I want to sort of share with you a way that I think is better on how to use AI as a web developer, again, to grow and to learn and to become better at our jobs. So we're going to take a look at two different paths when we stumble upon a problem and we want to use AI to help us solve that problem. The path number one is with React. So let's use React as an example. We have a re-rendering problem. We have a React application. We're going to see what the code example is in just a second. And we have a specific part of our React code base that is re-rendering when we don't want it to re-render. And then we copy and paste the code into ChatGPT and we ask it to solve our problem. And then we copy and paste the code back into the editor. Now, I know that there are a lot of code editors nowadays that also do all of this stuff for us. So instead of us having to copy the code, put it into an LLM, and then copy it back into the code base, they do all of that stuff for us, but the situation here would be exactly the same. We have this first path, which is what I think most of web developers nowadays do when it comes to using AI. We sort of copy the code, we put it into the LLM, and we expect a solution to come back on the other side where it already solves the entire problem for us. We don't even need to think about the solution at all. As an example, we'll use this simple React web application that has a list of to-dos, which can either be active or completed, and we can toggle between these states. So we can click here to see the active to-dos only, and here for the completed to-dos only. And we can also toggle here to see all of the to-dos again. And if we want, we can also add new to-do to our list. And then we also have a counter down here, which we can increment by clicking on this button. And if we increment the counter, you're going to see something happen here inside the console. The component is going to re-render each time that we increment the counter, but the filter to-dos are also going to re-render. If you are familiar with React, you probably already know what the solution is to this problem, but still we're going to go over it so that you understand how to use AI in a more productive way as a web developer. First, we have this counter where we set here the state, and then we have the to-dos. We generate random to-dos using this function, and then we have the filter, which can either be all, active, or completed. And then we have the filter to-dos that we grab from here, we pass the filter, and then we pass all of our to-dos. Then we also have this function that will allow us to add a new to-do. And then we have both of these console logs, one when the component re-renders and another one when the filter to-dos re-render. Now let's move back to the browser. And if we try to increment the counter again, you're going to see that the filter to-dos continue to be re-rendered each time that we do so. And we don't want this to happen since there's actually no change happening inside of the filter to-dos inside of this React component. So this is what we want to fix. We want to prevent the filter to-dos from being re-rendered each time that we increment the counter. So let's ask ChatGPT to fix this problem using the first path. So I said here the filter to-dos are re-rendering when I increase the counter, fix it. And then I pasted the code for this React component. And then the answer was the following. The issue is that filter to-dos is recalculated on every render. Since the filter to-dos array is being recalculated within the component during each render, even if counter changes, which has no relation to the to-dos or filter, the filter to-dos array will trigger the second use effect hook due to its dependency. To fix this, you can memorize filter to-dos so that it only recalculates when to-dos or filter changes, not when counter changes. You can achieve this using use memo. And then it shows us here what the updated code would look like. And then at the end, it also provides a simple explanation of the use memo hook. The filter to-dos are memoized using use memo to prevent unnecessary recalculations when unrelated state like counter changes. Now, filter to-dos only changes when either to-dos or filter changes. And ChatGPT here not only gave us the code solution, but it also sort of explained what the solution was about. Now, I still think that this explanation was not really very in-depth, and we don't learn a lot from this response from the LLM, but rather we get here all of the solution that we probably would copy and then paste back into our code, and we really wouldn't be learning a lot about React by doing so. So let's see how we can take the second path using ChatGPT to learn a lot more from this problem and also deepen our understanding of React. The second path would be again to have a React re-rendering problem, and then we would copy and paste the code into ChatGPT, and then we want to ask what the possible problems could be. And here is where the difference lies. Instead of asking it to simply solve the problem and give us the updated code, we want to ask what the different problems could be that are leading to this issue with the React re-rendering. And then we want to not only ask it for an in-depth explanation of exactly what's happening, but we also want to ask it for learning resources, whether that's the response that the ChatGPT gives us or links that we can read and learn more about the thing that we are trying to solve. And this is going to take us on a completely different path and on a completely different journey than simply copy and pasting the code back into the editor. Because at this point, we can start to try different solutions and then adjust based on the feedback that we see inside of the program itself, in this case, inside of our React web application. Then this is also going to allow us to read the documentation and better understand how the technology itself works. And then we'll also be able to explore different solutions that we might want to give a try instead of only relying on the solution that the LLM gave us. In other words, the second path will be a learning path. And because you have the help of the AI, you don't need to have an expert next to you telling you what the possible solutions might be, but instead you can rely on the LLM to do that for you. But hoping it just does it for you and you don't even have to think about it will cause many different problems. First, it will cause your brain to atrophy over time since you're not focusing on solutions to a problem, but rather you're outsourcing those solutions to the LLM all of the time. 2, like I said previously, it introduces bugs into the code base since you're not able to vet the code AI tools generate. And finally, and what I think it's the most important point here, is that you won't evolve as a web developer. Yes, it is true that you might be able to solve the problem at hand, but the reality is you don't know what you're solving, why you're solving it, or how you're solving it. Now let's see how it would look to ask ChatGPT for help using the second path. I have this web application and the filter to-dos seem to be re-rendering when I change the count. Can you help me and point me in the right direction so I know how to fix it? Point to any React documentation or relevant data sources where I can learn how to fix it. Also, feel free to provide a small summary of what the problem might be. And then I also pasted here the React application that we're trying to solve. Then it gave me an explanation of the problem, also on how to fix it, and then it also showed me how the modified code would look like. And then at the end, it also gave me a few key points, and then it also pointed me to the React documentation. And then I follow up by saying explain use memo in depth, since it referred to use memo here, and also provide more links to resources I can learn from. Then down here, it provided me an in-depth explanation of use memo, and it also gave me different examples on how to use it. And as you can see, this explanation of use memo is a lot more in-depth, and if you give this a read, it will help you understand much better what the use memo hook is and how to use it inside of a web application and exactly why it fits this problem that we're currently facing inside of the React web application. And then at the end, it also gave me more resources, including the official React documentation, different articles on React re-rendering, also different articles on React performance optimization, and also a few video tutorials. And at the end, it said that by understanding use memo and its appropriate use cases, you'll be able to improve the performance of your application, especially when dealing with expensive operations or large data sets. And this explanation is perfect because this is completely true. If you understand what you're doing inside of your web application and why you're implementing particular solutions, in this case to solve this re-rendering problem, then you'll be a much better web developer and you'll be able to solve these issues without any problem when compared to web developers that rely on AI tools all the time and don't understand at all what they're actually doing. Then I followed up 2 more times so that the links that it provided me would actually work. And after doing that, I still asked one more question. And that is, what other solutions to this problem might be in React besides use memo? So what other solutions could there be out there to fix this problem outside of use memo? So use memo is a solution to this problem, but there are in fact other solutions inside of React that we can use, including splitting this component into these 2 different components. So if we place only the counter into a separate component, and then we also place the list of to-dos into a separate component, then we're going to have this complete separation between the state of both of these things, and we don't have to think anymore about this issue at all, or even using the use memo hook. And then it answered with a bunch of different possible solutions, including splitting large components, which is what I've just mentioned. So in this case, if a component is large and has multiple parts that don't depend on each other, you can split it into smaller components. This allows React to re-render only the parts that change. For example, in your app component, the to-do list and counter are independent. You can split them into separate components to avoid re-rendering the list when the counter changes. And as you can see, it gives us here also a nice alternative solution to our problem. And if we were to only go with the first solution, we might be missing on these different solutions and more importantly on actually understanding what the problem is and how we can fix it. And I want to conclude by saying that AI, just like any other tool in our toolkit as web developers, is just that. It is a tool and it is up to us how we use it. And I think we'll be getting much more value out of it if we use it as a learning companion instead of relying on it to write the code for us. So I hope this video was helpful to you, and I'll see you on the next one.